Here is a math problem that tricks almost everyone. If your goal is to save $1 million and you currently have $100,000, what percentage of the journey have you completed? The obvious answer is 10%. It's basic elementary school math. 100 is 1/10 of 1,000. If you look at a progress bar, it looks tiny. It looks insignificant. And this visual deception is exactly why most people fail. But in the world of finance, linear math is a lie. If you have saved your first $100,000, you are not 10% done. Mathematically, in terms of time, effort, and suffering, you are actually 26% done. You are more than 1/4 of the way to the finish line. Most people quit because they think they have a massive mountain left to climb. They look at their bank account, they look at the goal, and the gap feels unbridgeable. They don't realize they have already climbed the steepest, most difficult part of the mountain. Welcome to Infinite Systems. Today, I am going to prove to you, using cold, hard math, why the first $100,000 is the hardest money you will ever make, and why the next $900,000 is actually the easy part. Let's look at the linear trap. This is how the human brain is wired to think. We evolved to understand linear threats. If a lion is running at you, it gets closer at a constant speed. But money doesn't work like a lion. It works like a virus. It spreads exponentially. But because we think linearly, here is the depressing calculation most people make. Imagine you are disciplined, you work hard, you manage to save $10,000 a year. That is a lot of money for most people. To get to your first $100,000, it takes you 10 years. 10 years of sacrifice, 10 years of saying no to vacations. It is brutal. Then your brain projects this forward. You think, if it took me 10 years to save $100K, it will take me 90 more years to get to $1 million. You realize you will be dead before you get rich. And so, you give up. You buy the new car. You spend the money. You exit the game. But you are forgetting the third player in the game. You are forgetting the silent partner, compound interest. Let's run the real numbers. Let's assume you invest your savings into the S&P 500 with a standard historical average return of 7% adjusted for inflation. Getting from 0 to 100,000 takes about 7.8 years if you invest $10,000 a year. This is what I call the labor phase. During these first 7 or 8 years, nearly 90% of your net worth comes from you. It comes from your sweat, your early mornings, your late nights, your stress. The investment returns during this phase are tiny. In year 1, you might earn $700 in interest. That's nice, but it doesn't change your life. It doesn't even pay 1 month of rent. It feels like the system is broken. It feels like you are shoveling sand into a bottomless pit. This period is known as the Valley of Disappointment. This is where 95% of aspiring investors quit. They put in the work, but they don't see the result immediately. They stop just inches away from striking gold. But here is where the magic happens. Once you cross that $100,000 mark, the physics of money fundamentally change. You are no longer pushing the boulder up the hill. The boulder has reached the summit, and it is starting to tip over. Let's look at the acceleration. To get from 100,000 to 200,000, it doesn't take 7.8 years anymore. It takes about 5 years. Why? Because your $100,000 is earning $7,000 a year on its own.
Think of every dollar as a little employee. When you have $1,000, you have a few lazy interns working for you. They buy you a coffee once a year. But when you have $100,000, you have an army of reliable workers. They are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't sleep. They don't take sick days. And most importantly, they recruit more workers. Now watch what happens next. The acceleration gets crazy. From 200K to 300K takes only 3.7 years. From 300K to 400K takes just 3 years. The gaps are getting smaller. the snowball is getting bigger. By the time you are at $900,000, the jump to $1 million takes less than 1.5 years. Think about that comparison. The first 100K took almost 8 years of your life. The last 100K took 1 year. It is the same amount of money, but it required 8 times less effort. There's a famous rule in finance called the Rule of 72. It states that if you divide 72 by your interest rate, you get the number of years it takes for your money to double without you adding a single penny. At a 10% return, your money doubles every 7.2 years. This means if you hit 100K and literally stop saving, you never add another dollar, that money will turn into 200K, then 400K, then 800K automatically. But you cannot access this magic until you build the initial capital. This is why the late billionaire Charlie Munger famously said, "The first 100,000 is a bitch." He didn't say it was hard, he said it was a bitch. He was being aggressive because he knew the reality. He said, "I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. He knew that without that initial capital, you are fighting gravity alone. But once you have it, the system fights for you. So back to our pie chart on the thumbnail. Why 26%? If the total journey to $1 million takes roughly 28 years of consistent saving, and the first 100,000 takes nearly 8 years, simple math tells us that is roughly 26 to 28% of the total timeline. Even though you only have 10% of the money, you have served 26% of the sentence. You have completed the hardest quarter of the race. This should give you hope. If you are grinding right now, sitting at $10,000 or $20,000, feeling like it's hopeless, understand this. You are currently doing the hardest work of your entire financial life. It literally gets easier from here. So knowing this, how do we act? How do we conquer the first 100,000 faster? Because waiting 8 years is too long. We want to compress time. To do this, you have to enter monk mode. Since compound interest is weak at the start, you must compensate with brute force. In the early days, your savings rate matters more than your investment return. You need to aggressively cut expenses and aggressively increase income. Stop trying to look rich. That car payment we talked about in the last video, it is killing your snowball. That expensive apartment in the city center, it is stealing your future years. Every dollar you save today is worth 10 times more than a dollar you save in 20 years because today's dollars have the most time to grow. Treat the first 100,000 like a medical emergency. If your life depended on getting $100,000 in 3 years, could you do it? You would work 2 jobs. You would sell things you don't need. You would learn a high-value skill. You would stop eating out. You need to bring that level of intensity to this specific goal. Why? Because once you get there, you can relax. Once you have the capital engine running, you can start to enjoy life a bit more, knowing that your army of dollars is working in the background. But until you hit that number, push. Don't look at the 900,000 you still need. That number is too big. It's scary. Only look at the 100,000 milestone. That is your freedom line. That is your escape velocity. Cross it, and the rest is just inevitable math. Subscribe to build your system. Welcome to the 26%.